Outside Health and Fitness Podcast, episode 142, International Inspiration.
And building that up from 1 hour, January, and then September, able to do 3,000 miles in that period of time was inspiring for me, if nothing else. In the knowledge that I've helped to do that, it's probably on the level of winning one of my Olympic medals, to be quite honest.
Welcome to the Outside Health and Fitness Podcast. We're getting outside the box, outside our comfort zone, and outside and in shape. If you're bored with the same old fitness routine at the gym and you're ready to try something new, then this is the show for you. We're exploring new and fun ways to get fit on the trail, on the water, on the slopes, and outside.
Hi, this is Steve Stearns from Outside Health and Fitness, and thank you for joining me for another episode. If you're new to the show, we like to stay fit and active by having fun outside. We like to ride, slide, run, walk, hike, bike, golf, golf, swim, and ski. If it's fun outside and it keeps us healthy, then we love it. So if you're like us and you like to have fun outside, then you found the right place. You know, one of the coolest things about doing this show are the opportunities I have to meet some amazing people from all over the world. On today's show, I'm going to share some of my favorite moments talking with international guests. On today's show, you'll hear from an inspirational athlete from the UK who's undertaking an amazing feat to raise $7 million for charity. A world champion cyclist who's helping other people discover how cycling can change their lives. And an adventurer who, among other things, rode solo across the Atlantic. So fasten your seatbelt and return your tray to its upright and locked position. We're getting ready to take off for some international inspiration.
OutsideHealthandFitness.com.
So one of the most fascinating people I've had a chance to meet from across the pond is Mark Llewellyn. Mark has an amazing story, and he's just one of the nicest guys you can imagine. He does so much to give back. In fact, he's running, biking, and walking across the USA 7 times in 7 years to raise $7 million for 7 charities. Now, as you can see, 7 is a really important number for Mark. When Mark entered the service and in basic training, there was an incident that changed Mark's life forever. Mark was lined up with all his buddies, and the sergeant was asking the group questions.
One of the sergeants said, who's the ugliest in the troop? And they looked at the guy and they laughed, and they said, who's the most boring person in the troop? And they looked at, there's another few names, and people were laughing. And then they said, who's the fattest guy in the troop? And I just looked at this guy from Liverpool, and I just thought, it's definitely Scouse. He really needs to lose weight. But every single person turned their head and looked at me.
Oh, no.
So, and they all just burst out laughing. And
wow.
It was one of those things where you sort of think to yourself, you might not say it, but you get a little thing in your mind where you say, do you know what? I'm going to show all of you, I'm going to outperform every one of you, Yeah. As impossible a goal as that was. That was a ridiculous goal. So I started the running, didn't like it. I was having knee pains when I started. I was having nasty cramp I was waking up with in my legs in the middle of the night. And this was doing very small runs, like, half a mile runs, 1-2 mile runs. And I found it very, very difficult. And basically, I told the sergeant major I wanted to become he said, what regiment do you want to go to when you pass out of basic training? I said, 2-9 Commando. And he looked at me as if to say, you are on cloud cuckoo land. That is absolute impossibility for you.
Wow.
He was looking at this guy I wasn't the best soldier. I wasn't the fittest in the troop. But the thing is, Steve, he was looking at me as I was then. And I was looking at me as I am going to become.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you need to do. You might look in the mirror and you see this certain person, but you can't focus on where you are. You need to focus on where you want to go.
And that's exactly what Mark did. He focused on where he wanted to go and became an elite Green Beret. It was the first in a long line of impossible goals that Mark would take on and achieve. One of the most amazing is the one he's currently undertaking.
I'm running, walking, and cycling 7 times across America.
Wow.
For 7 charities over 7 years. And we've just got Edward Norton's CrowdRise team on board.
Yeah.
And we're going to go for $7 million.
So now you've started in Florida, is that right?
Yeah, started in Miami.
Miami, yeah.
And then I basically started, I ran 30 miles the first day, 23 the next day, and then really carried on like that. But I do have rest days as well, because there's so many incredible things in the United States. It's just such a brilliant country, and there's so many excellent things to see. And I thought to myself, should I just slog this out? I don't know if you use that word, sort of, or grind it out.
Yeah.
Should I just grind it out all the time and just make it a tough thing for myself? And I thought, well, I can do that for most days, but some other days, I thought, I also want to promote the United States to the other people around the world. And obviously I'm from the UK. Let's promote the sort of other great things, the canyons or whatever in the States.
What an incredible undertaking. And by the way, that's 21,000 miles, just in case you're counting. So Mark is just getting underway. And if you want to follow his progress and even participate, you can by checking out his site, The Great American Journey of Hope. Now, in order to train for his 7 trips across the country, Mark worked with his friend, British cycling world champion and Olympic medalist, Brian Steele. I was really lucky to get a chance to talk with Brian on episode 128. Brian has retired from competitive cycling now, but has been busy coaching and mentoring others and helping people reach new levels of fitness and discover how much fun it is to ride. As a professional cyclist and a member of the British Olympic team, cycling had become a job for Brian. Fortunately, a friend's advice helped him rediscover his passion for riding.
It was really British cycling. So I could talk a long time about what we did, but we actually set it up as a business. The World Class Performance Plan within cycling is a business, and it's valued on Olympic medals every 4 years. And it had turned into a job. I couldn't believe how many times my coach said, just get your job done. And we did a lot of work of what's everybody's job within the team and stuff.
Yeah.
So to be honest, it had turned into a job, something I was being paid for and paid well, and knowing at the end of the day, Olympic medal is very special. So, and just being so driven and determined. I remember when I first retired, I went for a ride in a road. I probably rode out on probably at least 2-3 times a week, and I rode long, sort of suddenly started looking at the countryside and realised I'd built a housing estate, and I'd never noticed. I know they'd done some building work there, but I didn't know there was like 50 houses built and people living in them.
Wow.
So that's how driven and determined I was, really. And that really was just nice to say, actually, let's get away for a bit, get out of that pigeonhole. And Dave's view was get out of the pigeonhole and become an Olympic cyclist, become an Olympic medalist, and you can always come back. And I would definitely say that was probably the best advice I've ever been given.
So he took that advice and retired from competition. He rediscovered the joy of cycling and began to use his experience as a professional to coach and mentor others. His style of coaching came from the impact he saw when British cycling shifted their coaching style and took home Olympic medals.
We made a big key change from Atlanta on to Sydney. And this is a lot of work, not only in cycling, but I do in sport and the business and the educational work I do, is to work with people on their level. My first 2 Olympics, it was very much what we talked about as a telling culture, which I class as coaching, is I tell, do this, do that, do the other. And The athlete or the young person just goes away and does it with no questioning about it, really. Hopefully you can appreciate that, in the middle of my endurance phase, I was doing 6-7 hours on my own in February. I don't know about guys in the US, but February in England is not very nice.
No, it's not very nice here either.
Yeah. So it was a case of, in that culture, you're just thinking, well, what am I doing this for? And, well, coaches told me to. And very quickly, you can start losing your way a little bit. Well, the big key change we made with British cycling was to move that telling culture and an asking culture. And I do a lot of mentoring across those 3 sectors. And that's all I always say is mentoring is just asking, well, what do you want to work on? How are you going to do that? What do you think we should do together? And I would say that's basically that approach. For 2000, won as the Olympic medal.
Now, while earning a medal in the Sydney Games was very special for him, it's his work mentoring and helping others achieve their goals that really inspires Brian. I asked Brian if he could share a story with us.
Yeah, we had a good example last year. We worked with a lady, actually a Spanish lady, but I have an honorary degree from my home city, University of Nottingham. Yep. And every year they do the Vice Chancellor does a 2-week cycling challenge. Last year they did it. They went to all 4 corners of the country. So it's over 2 weeks, a 3,000-mile challenge.
Wow.
I worked as a consultant on the program, and obviously some guys are quite experienced. This lady came along. She'd not ridden a bike since she was 12, and she'd had a breast cancer scare the year before, and she said she was 55, and in a way it was the last opportunity to do something like this. Mm-hmm. We did our first session in January. We actually did it around the Olympic Park in London, and she struggled to do an hour, to be quite honest. And we built her up, and again worked at her pace and her level, and built up. I must admit, I had a tear in my eye when she crossed the finishing line in September, when she had completed the 3,000 miles, which was an amazing challenge for her. And her target was not to get off and walk less than 10 times. And I think the big thing about that, she actually she got off and walked 4 times in the 2 weeks. She did admit she sweared to herself every second of the day. But I think that was inspiring, and just somebody with that determination. But again, it was working with her at her level, making sure she had the right bike, the right equipment, the right nutritional level, and building that up from 1 hour, January, and then September, able to do 3,000 miles in that period of time was inspiring for me, if nothing else. In the knowledge that I've helped to do that, it's probably on the level of winning one of my Olympic medals, to be quite honest.
What an amazing and inspirational person Brian is. If you want Brian to mentor or coach you, he does that online. And I'll have links in the show notes so you can get in touch with him and find out more about the incredible work he's doing. Okay, so let's park the bike, take off your helmet, and put on your life jacket. We're going to get in the boat with adventure sailor Leah Ditton. I was so excited to have Leah on the show in episode 119, and she shared some incredible stories about her adventures on the water. I was lucky to talk with her just after she finished her book, 50 Water Adventures to Do Before You Die. Leah has very diverse talents. She's a writer, an artist, and adventure sailor who, among other things, crossed the Atlantic Ocean alone in a rowboat. She did? Really? All alone?
I did. I entered a race called the Ostar, which goes from Plymouth, bottom foot of England, to Newport, Rhode Island in America.
Yeah.
And it took me 29 days.
Wow.
On a very, very small boat. It was about 35 feet. The cabin was the size of a sofa. You could not stand up. You could lie down. And to get into the bunk, you had to unpack the bunk and put the stuff on the floor. So it was extremely small and very wet. And I felt like I lived underwater for about most of that month.
Can you imagine spending a month at sea in a 35-foot boat? I mean, how do you prepare yourself for that? When I asked Leah, she told me that most of her time was spent preparing the boat for the crossing. She didn't do much in the way of physical training, and in terms of preparing mentally, it may have been impossible. Perhaps she didn't really even know what she would be facing.
I didn't, but I really wanted to do it. I had a very strong burning desire, and I had to go through, rebuilding the boat and endless hurdles of people saying no and you are crazy. Everyone said you are no and you are crazy almost all of the time. And I didn't have money for electricity, for glue, to rent power equipment. And so I got quite compelling with my story about why this company needs to give me these items.
Yes.
And so there were about 40 sponsors involved by the end. It was a lot of legwork.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's just the desire to do it, which got me mentally across.
So Leah was the only female and the youngest competitor to finish the Ostar that year. In fact, of the 45 boats that started the race, only 19 finished. Partway through the race, there was some extreme weather, and many of the boats that started just didn't make it.
There was basically a big storm in the middle, and that divided the fleet. A lot of boats limped back after that storm with broken boats. A few people got injured, and then the rest of us continued on. So it was that storm which sort of made or broke your race. the storm had parked over the top of me and was going nowhere. So for about 2.5 days, I sat in this storm, just like your own personal rain cloud sitting over the top of you. You know, all the sails were down. I had a tiny bit of sail up to keep the boat moving slightly. And I was in my survival suit. I had my rescue beacon in my pocket. And, you know, I was quite prepared that this could be somewhere towards the end.
Yeah.
But I'd had another experience on another boat where we'd gone through a hurricane. So I knew it could get worse. So I was quite grateful that it wasn't that bad.
Amazing. I'm really glad it wasn't that bad either. I can't imagine what that was like. But it shows what an incredible spirit and adventurer Leah is to have finished the Austar that year. Leah has a blog where she writes about her adventures and the other projects she's got going on, and I'm going to have a link to her blog and a link where you can get a copy of her book, 50 Water Adventures to Do Before You Die. I have a copy right here, and it's a beautiful book. And by the way, there are plenty of adventures in the book for everybody. So those are a few of the memorable and inspirational people I've had the honor to bring to you through Outside Health and Fitness. I hope you enjoyed this best of show, and if you would like to hear the full episodes with Mark, Brian, or Leah, I'll have links in the show notes for this episode at outsidehealthandfitness.com/142. While you're there, please consider sponsoring the show. Any amount you can pledge really helps me keep the lights on and helps me bring you more amazing guests like Mark, Brian, and Leah. Be sure to leave your name so I can give you a special shout out on the show. I have more super guests lined up, including a world-class joggler, disc golf instructor, polo champion, and more. So be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss out. Remember, visit outsidehealthandfitness.com/142. I'm Steve Stearns. Thank you again for listening. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Outside Health and Fitness Podcast. I hope you got something of value from the show today that helps you get outside and in shape. For more on taking your health and fitness outside, visit outsidehealthandfitness.com and subscribe to the show. Until next time, I'll see you outside.